So I watched Blink twice, which I don't know if any of you guys have seen.
Yeah, I watched that.
Came out recently. To try and not give any spoilers away, because it's quite a very straightforward story in terms of sort of kind of like what happens. So it's quite difficult to try and explain. But it's very much a tech billionaire meets a group of women at this kind of like sort of like gala event, and then he invites them out to his private island, and from there kind of like with things start happening, and then it ultimately becomes a movie of her trying to survive this island. It's horror, isn't it? I think that kind of falls under the horror genre. Either way, it was a very good watch. Got like good characters in there, interesting kind of like character dynamics, and it just kind of serves up what you would expect from the type of movie.
I watched a film called Girls of the Sun. It's a French war drama film, pretty much. Women soldiers go against extremists in, I think it was it? I think it was like in a Kurdish town. It was like in a Kurdish town, and pretty much yeah. So they go up against them, and one of the main actresses, she tries to retrieve her son as well because he was held hostage by them too. So I'm pretty sure he's going to become a child soldier.
Is it based on real events?
I don't know if it's based on real events. I never checked.
It sounds like the war against Islamic State.
I think it is based on real events. Hold on, let me quickly. Yeah, it is. It's based on the truth. Yeah, it is. So yeah, it was a really good story. Because there's a notable actor in her. I forgot her name, but she was in a few movies which I liked. Well, she was in a series called Invasion, I think, and then she was in Extraction 2. But she's the main actress, Baha, in the film. So yeah, man, The Girls of the Sun, I definitely recommend that one if anyone hasn't seen that.
Did it feel like real history, or is it very stylized or idealized? Or
I'd say it was stylized, but not to the point where it was unrealistic. Like we were watching, like I can imagine it be similar to what's going on now, to what I'm seeing in the film.
So my best thing I watched this week is season 1 of Boardwalk Empire, which is a 2010 HBO historical drama about the Prohibition era, where it's set in Atlantic City, where Prohibition has just come into effect, and it's essentially about the rich and powerful of that town essentially trying to put in place like alcohol smuggling in order to keep their businesses going, and all the money and power and corruption and violence that comes with that. Like one of the characters is Al Capone, and so like it's about organized crime trying to get in on that, and it touches on all the political and cultural aspects of that time frame. And it's kind of taking this HBO tapestry approach, where you have a whole bunch of different characters who all have their own stories going on, but they add up to kind of a bigger picture of a larger narrative that's moving forward. So there's 6 seasons of it, and so I've only seen the first season, and so far it's excellent. And like the characters are good. It flows well. It's interesting. It feels historically accurate as far as I could tell. So yeah, all around a good watch.
Best recent thing I've seen is BBC One series called Kin. Pretty much simple. It's about a Dublin crime family going through gangland wars. It's a fun one. I think what makes it fun is it's obviously how impossible the wars that they get into feel, especially the war that and also like the war that's brewing within their own family as well. So yeah, that's definitely one that I would recommend. I don't think it's not complex. It's pretty straightforward. Like when it comes to other crime series, like gangland type of mob type of series, pretty straightforward, pretty simple, pretty similar. But I just think just the impossible challenges and like just the internal beef is what makes it pretty exciting. So I'd recommend it's 2 seasons.
The best thing I watched last week, for one, I'm still working my way through The Penguin, and so far it's just been getting better and better. That's not my pick this week. My pick is Weird, the Al Yankovic story. Okay, which of you know Weird Al Yankovic?
I've heard of it. It's got Harry Potter, Daniel Radcliffe as the actor in it. Yeah, I've heard of it. I've not watched it.
But you don't know Weird Al?
No.
Weird Al is one of the best musical comedians to have ever worked. Like he's been doing musical parody for 40 years. And this is essentially his life story, but it's also a parody of biopics. So it essentially recounts the way he got into music and into musical parody, but it also kind of lampoons all the different tropes and cliches that you find in biopics. So those two things are kind of happening at the same time. And like it's full of great actors, and it's full of like it's probably one of the funniest things I've seen in a while. Like movies that actually make me laugh out loud are pretty rare in recent years, and this one did that very quickly. It takes its silliness completely seriously, which is what you're supposed to do, and it's very smart and very funny, and it just gets better if you know Weird Al's history and life story. But I think even if you don't, you can still enjoy it as a really good satire of biopics.
How did it get you to press play? Because I know you don't like biopics. So did you know that going into sort of watching the movie?
I like Weird Al. That's why.
Okay,
So
fair.
I've been listening to that guy's music since the 2000s. And when I heard that it wasn't just a biopic, but actually a satire as well, that's where I really got interested. I think if you just did a straight biopic of his life, I wouldn't have watched it. But just the amount of talent that's involved in this and the reputation it has for how funny it is, that's what got me to check it out. And like in the first half hour or so, I was mildly interested, and then suddenly I realized I was on a roller coaster and forgot to put my seatbelt on. And it's just wonderful, like one of the best comedies in years.
This week I watched the Mr. McMahon documentary on Netflix. So immediately that's of no interest to you, Daniel, because one, it's a documentary, and two, it's about wrestling. So I can't imagine you.
For two.
Yeah, exactly. But it was just like interesting because, like, you know, wrestling was a big part of my childhood. I loved it, especially like the Attitude Era. Kind of fell off it recently, but it was just kind of good to kind of get a bit of the history and like some of the backstory and like learn some like new things as well about sort of, you know, kind of the wrestling world and sort of where sort of the company was at certain points and this and the other, and just again some of the scandalous stuff that happened in the background as well. So if you are a wrestling fan, actually I wouldn't even say if you're a wrestling fan, if you just like are into like documentaries and you do like to learn about sort of, you know, real life characters, then this one is definitely one worth checking out, because Vince McMahon is definitely an interesting character in all the right and wrong ways possible.
What I watched was a show called The Resort, a drama series pretty much based on a couple who go, I don't know if it was a honeymoon, but they just end up going on an island. I think it was Hawaii, and it pretty much turns into like some true crime story conspiracy when the girlfriend ends up finding a phone in the woods after a crash. And then her and her couple go on some next detective couple search for answers, pretty much. I'm only on episode 2, or was it 3? So far it's all right, because it's got a comedic tone to it as well, which so it's like I wouldn't say it's a comedy mystery, but it's definitely got like a comedic tone to it. So that's why I was a bit reluctant to watch it. But after seeing Christine Milotti, I think after seeing her in The Penguin, and obviously I saw her in How I Met Your Mother as well. But after seeing her in The Penguin, I was like, I need to watch more of her stuff. So I kind of went on a, deep dive into the stuff that she's done, and I sort of realized, oh, this looks pretty decent. Saw it, went to go watch it. I was like, okay, so far so good.
My best thing was Entourage, which is a 2003 drama comedy series. Ran for 8 seasons on HBO. And it's essentially about this actor and his entourage who are trying to make it in Hollywood. And it's essentially a study of how Hollywood works and what it takes to succeed in Hollywood. And it's kind of equal parts kind of juvenile fantasy and also kind of critique of Hollywood in general. And it's kind of both of those at the same time. And it's kind of a look into how Hollywood worked kind of before the current era, when stars were a lot bigger and there was a lot less scrutiny on Hollywood and that sort of thing. And it's essentially follows this actor who, as he gets his first break, as Aquaman, and which is a surprise hit that nobody expected, and then he becomes this massive actor, and suddenly he gets all these opportunities, and it's all these ups and downs. It's a really well written, really funny drama that is a lot of fun to watch, and it's also kind of this time capsule of this is kind of what Hollywood was like before people started paying attention, that sort of thing. So it's actually gotten more interesting over time. I think it's like on a surface level, it looks like it should have aged really poorly because it kind of glamorizes that time. But then it also kind of just portrays it. Like Harvey Weinstein shows up in a couple of episodes and he does not look like it's not a good look, for instance. But that was before all the scrutiny that was applied to him, that sort of thing. So it's kind of gotten more interesting over time, not less, I would say.
I actually heard a lot about Entourage, actually. And I didn't realize it was that old. But it's just like one of those like classic TV series that I never got around to watching. You know, things like that and like things like The Wire as well. But definitely sounds interesting.
Yeah. And it also kind of it's like the reason I'm mentioning it is not just because I enjoyed watching it. It's just a really well crafted show. But it's also kind of got a reputation for being kind of trivial, right? Like that's kind of just like this juvenile fantasy. And there's a little bit more to it than that, and I think, like, especially in hindsight, there's a bit more to it than people give it credit for. So the best thing I watched last week was Band of Brothers, which is a 2001 HBO war drama miniseries about paratroopers in World War II. So essentially follows a couple of people who joined the paratroopers about halfway into World War II. And we follow them through their training. And then their first real mission is the invasion of Normandy. And from there on, they kind of follow the flow of World War II right until its conclusion, with the last episodes being in occupied Germany and kind of showing the beginnings of the Cold War, essentially. And it's a really good historical drama. It kind of starts out a little bit glamorizing the war, and like you've got these young characters who are very idealistic and enthusiastic about joining the war, but then the reality of the war hits very quickly, and we kind of see kind of their successes and their struggles and how war is not quite what they imagined, but at the same time, as the name suggests, this whole angle of camaraderie, right? Like that they join as a bunch of unconnected strangers and they finish as brothers, essentially, the ones that survived anyway. And it's really good. I think it, as far as I could tell, gets the history right, and it kind of at least hits the big items you might expect from a World War II story. And it's just a solid drama. Like, characters are good, the production values are good, the stories are interesting, the drama is gripping. It ties into the history and the time it's set in well. It just does everything right that a historical drama should. So that's my pick this week.
And does it kind of do enough to kind of like stand out from, you know, other TV series or movies that are like set in World War II? Does it kind of like add anything sort of new to it, or is it just kind of it does what's come before, but it does it really well?
It's pretty much the latter. It pretty much does everything. Like, it follows this one very specific unit that actually existed, and like the major events that are depicted in the series are essentially kind of the big milestones of how they experienced the war. So it's kind of that specific perspective. And that is kind of in, like, every episode starts with interviews from the surviving members of that unit, who kind of talk about their experiences, and that kind of contextualize what we then see in the actual show. So it doesn't, like, it's from 2001, so it's not an especially revolutionary take on anything, but it's just really good. Like, if you haven't seen any war dramas about World War II yet, this is probably the one to watch, I would say. I didn't get to see much because I moved apartments, and because there's a new Brotato expansion out that I've been playing. But one thing I did watch this week was The Italian Job, which is there's two movies by that name, and I'm talking about the 2003 remake, where it kind of starts out as a pretty standard heist movie where a group of people get together and they make a plan how to steal a bunch of gold in Venice, and they pull off that plan, and as they drive away into the sunset, one of them betrays them and steals all their gold, essentially. And the rest of the team then spends the next year coming up with a plan on how to get back at him and steal the gold back. And then the actual movie starts, which is a heist movie in which a group of thieves have to steal from another thief who not only knows them, but also knows all of their tricks and tactics and schemes. And one of the people joining them is the daughter of the leader of the crew, who, like her father, is a safecracker, but is not a thief, but works for the police cracking safes. And so she joins these people who she despises because they are the reason her father essentially spent her entire childhood in prison, and she kind of has to kind of work with them to get back at the person who killed her father. And so it's like the story about revenge and about these different people kind of doing things for their own reasons. And it's also a fairly classic heist movie in which they plan a job and they execute it and everybody contributes like a specialty, and then something goes wrong and they have to adapt and so on, right? But the twist is that they're stealing from a thief who knows their tricks. So it's just a really solid movie. If you like heist movies, it's a really solid one. Like, the characters are likable and the twist makes it a little bit more interesting. So just a solid recommendation.
I have seen that actually previously, a very long time ago. I do remember it being good, but I've not watched it in like many years. But that's really good movie.